What's going on YouTube? It is your boy Aydian here, and I'm going a little crazy here. I got a lot going on for the Philly Health Conference and for Playlist Live. So I have Playlist Live this upcoming weekend. I believe it's the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And then right after that, Philly starts on the 7th, 8th, and 9th. So if you're in the DC area, come check me out at Playlist. If you're in the Philly area, you should come down to Philly. It's a completely free conference. Gonna be there with my nonprofit Point of Pride. Gonna be there with my clothing company 0.5cc. Tons of new stuff. Very excited for it, but to say that I'm stressed out is an understatement. Last weekend was Gender Odyssey, so I've just been going nonstop the end of July into August, and you know, it's all coming to a climax, which is good. I'm excited for it. It was so awesome meeting everyone at Gender Odyssey, but I'm also very high strung and trying my best to get people in here into the studio to help me out during high times like this. So hopefully this will be one of the last times I'm super stressed in this fashion, but you know, I'm only human and I just keep trying to remind myself of that. So that's why I've been a little low-key on social media as well as on YouTube. I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to get my priorities in order. But YouTube is my baby, so I thought it was important to jump on here, even just to have a quick conversation about a topic that's kind of been coming up a lot recently in emails and DMs and stuff. So let's jump into the topic for today. Alright, so I'm going to try to make this video as much as I can without editing it. So you probably saw the topic of the video, which is just kind of a concept that, like, transitioning doesn't ever really end. And that doesn't mean that you're unhappy in your transition forever, but it's more about just that, like, transition is forever happening throughout your whole life. And I wanted to have this conversation because I got a couple of emails and a few DMs in the last month or so from people. Actually, they were mostly out of the United States, but one or two of them were in the US, and a lot of them were saying, like, oh, I saw you transitioned, how did you go about it, what do you take, how long have you been in it, like, transitioning, you know, like, I see that you transitioned very well, and just all these words using the word transition in the past tense, right? So transitioned. And I just felt like it wasn't really true. And what I found myself writing and typing out over and over to these emails was that, like, yes, like, my physical transition as far as me feeling in line with my body is at not a stopping point, but it's at a much more, like, a better point in my life. Like, I wake up every day, I don't have breast tissue, so I'm able to just throw on a shirt. I can walk around my office right now without a shirt on. I mean, I look in the mirror and I see the male identity that I feel inside looking back at me, which is amazing and just feels so complete. But it's not actually complete. And what I mean by that is, like, transition continuously happens, right? So first there's a concept of, like, identifying that you actually are transgender, right? So there's that. Then there's also this other part of transition, the next step of, like, am I going to do medical things to make myself, my physical body, feel more in line with how I feel on the inside, if you even don't feel in line, right? So in my case, right, so first it was realizing I was transgender. Then it was realizing that I want to go to the medical side of transitioning and take hormone replacement therapy. Then the next step was, do I want top surgery? And then it was, in my case, it was yes. So then that next step was getting top surgery. Now the next step is kind of the other things I come across. You know, do I want bottom surgery? Right now, I don't really want bottom surgery, so that's not necessarily in my present right now, but that doesn't mean it won't come up in the future. Same thing with a hysterectomy. Like, in my present right now, I'd like to get a hysterectomy, but I'm comfortable going to the doctor right now yearly and bi-yearly to get checked, so I will hold off on my hysterectomy until I feel like I actually really want it, and I can make a whole nother video about that. But so my hysterectomy, okay, now Jaylee and I are really wanting to get pregnant. We want to have a baby soon in our very close near future, and I'm very excited about it. But it's come up, you know, it's come up a lot about me being trans and us having a kid, and just like my insecurities of if we have a biological boy, and what will that make me feel, and do I feel insignificant of to have a boy and be able to raise a boy. And I know that a lot of people probably hear that and say, like, what do you mean, why can't you raise a boy? Like, my mother raised myself and two older brothers very fine and well, right? but it's my own insecurity. It's my own insecurity of watching a little boy who's 3, 4, 5, biological boy, and maybe he will identify also as a boy, right? So he may be a biological boy with biological parts who identify with those biological parts, and I didn't have that life, and I'm still working through my jealousy of not having a young little boy life. So I need to work on that in case I have a little boy, right? And so that's the next thing in my life. And then what if I have a little girl? Like, how am I going to teach a little girl? And then just the concept that, like, being transgender comes up in my life every single day. Even if I wasn't, you know, on this platform and putting myself out there, I didn't have a nonprofit and all this other stuff, which very much surrounds me in this hub of the trans world, which I love. But at the same time, like, even if I remove myself from that hub, like, being transgender is constantly coming up. Every time I have to use the restroom, it comes up. Anytime someone talks about, like, a stereotypical man, I have to think to myself, like, I am not a stereotypical man. Like, I refuse to become, I refuse to be, you know, that type of guy. And so, you know, I'm trying to usher in this new masculine consciousness, this new masculine energy that is still masculine, but is way more rounded than just, like, not crying and not feeling their feelings and not hugging and not being, you know, emotional and not being caring and loving, right? So, like, me as a trans man, and I know a lot of other trans men, are trying to usher in this new masculinity. Also non-trans men, so cis men, are also trying to do this too, which I can't talk about right now, but I could talk a little more in depth in another video when I'm actually allowed to talk about it. So there is this new consciousness coming in, right? And so being trans has to do with that, right? And so then, like, what happens if, you know, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that your transition doesn't just stop once you are able to look in the mirror and you see your identity looking back at you. Because being trans is constantly coming up. Constantly, right? I mean, from like I just said, like, the interactions I have with children who are identifying in their biological gender, and the interactions I have with children who are identifying in their transgender status, and they're only like 4 and 5, and so this little biologically born girl is able to experience a lot of things that little boys have that I didn't get to experience. So, like, I'm dealing with that. I'm also dealing with, like, my own visions of what masculinity is, what is being a man, what is, you know, just all those things. So if you think that you're just gonna take some magic hormone shot and you're just gonna get this surgery and you're gonna be transitioned, it's not how it works. It does not work that way. Things are a lot more constantly flowing, right? I feel like it's almost like it's like a stream, and like in the beginning of your transition, there's like this there's like a stream at the end of at the bottom of a mountain, and the mountain's full of snow, and in the beginning of your transition, the sun comes out and all this snow melts, and this big flood of water comes through this stream, and it almost overflows the stream, and it's just rushing, and it almost looks like a river, not even a stream. It's just flowing, right? And then, you know, you get on your hormones, you start to feel more comfortable in your body, you start making friends in your identity, you start feeling more comfortable, you've got a support system, you've got your own thing going, and then it kind of, you know, the river kind of the stream kind of looks more like a stream. It's kind of, you know, gets a little smaller, kind of flows a little more steadily, right? And so that's where I feel like I'm at right now. My transition, it's never going to end, right? It's going to be a continuous flow of water that's constantly you know, my stream is going to turn into a river, and it's going to turn into a flood sometimes, and then it's going to go back to a stream. And that's kind of how it feels, right? And so now, with this thought of having a baby, I feel like my little stream is kind of picking up some momentum here, because now I'm realizing, wow, like, I really have to work on this, right? Same thing like with my identity pre-transition. I think the first year and a half of my transition, I was like, don't talk about my pre-transition, don't show pictures, don't do any of that stuff, right? And the only time I want to show a picture is if, like, I'm trying to show some big change, right? Like, look what I used to look like and now look at me now, right? But I want to get more comfortable, and I am becoming more comfortable. Like, I don't want to be like, Mom, you have to take these pictures down. I don't want people to see, like, my birth name and me freak out about it. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to be comfortable with who I am. But that's a journey, and that's part of my transition, okay? That is part of me transitioning. Because personally, I feel like healing myself in my transition is part of my transition. So, just to, like, recap, your transition doesn't end. You don't hit this climax and then everything's great and fine and everything's so dandy and you never have to talk about being trans again, because you're just trans now. And I think I should remind, you know, even people who watch these videos and plan on maybe being stealth after their transition, like, I have so many friends I don't want to say so many, but I have a handful of friends who were out and about in the beginning of their transition, retracted and are stealth, and now they have a really hard time because they don't feel like they can even open up to anybody about being transgender. Even to me, somebody who is transgender, like, I see and I feel the energetic blockage when they start talking about being trans because they just feel like they cannot talk about it. You know what I mean? And so they're still in their transition because they're even if they don't want to be out and about and they still want to be stealth, they can't even have a conversation with somebody else who is trans about being trans. You know, so I just feel like there's this whole misconception that your transition has this finish start line and this end line. You know, a start and a finish. And it just doesn't, you know what I mean? I couldn't even say that my transition had this distinct start line either. It's because, you know, I've been realizing my identity my whole life, right? In the beginning, it was just being a little tomboy. That's what I was called. And then it was all of a sudden, you know, you're 11, 12, sexual hormones are starting to come out. People are starting to talk and joke more about sexuality. And then I realized I liked girls. So then it was like, oh, I must be a lesbian. And then it came into this new foundation that like, wow, I think I'm actually identifying in the wrong body. And that's where my problem is, right? So my transition didn't really have this distinct start line. I was just, you know, I say it started when I learned about the word transgender and I was able to say it to myself in the mirror for the first time, right? But that's what I call my start. But, and when we see people identifying in the bodies that they have always said they wanted to identify in, right, and you start to see that reflected in the physical body, that's when we like to say that people have finished transition. But it's just not true. And I think if you ask anybody, and even if you are trans and you look inside yourself, and you're one of those people who are like, oh, well, maybe you had top surgery, maybe you decided you wanted bottom surgery, maybe you've decided you want a hysterectomy, you've been on hormones for 10, 11, 12 years, and you're like, well, I am finished. I challenge you to challenge that answer, that you are finished, you know, that there's not other parts of you, because I think being finished means transgender never comes up. It just doesn't come up because you don't ever have to think about it, worry about it, even have a thought about it, because you just are how you are living in life. And I just don't think that's true. And so back to that stream analogy, I really think that transitioning is a constant flow. It doesn't end. And if you think it ends, I am not going to fight you or argue on that. That's fine. Like, I don't, like, that's okay. But I just challenge you to question yourself one more time if you really think it's over. And if you think it is, then that's okay. I respect that. I respect you taking time to look more deep into it and come to your own conclusion. And I also respect if you said that it was over and maybe now you come back and you look and you're like, you know what, in retrospect, maybe it's not over. So, alright, that's it. I want to end the video because I wasn't supposed to talk this long. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope me not editing too much didn't make it too hard to follow. I appreciate the love. If you like this video, if you think this is a cool topic, you want to dive more into some things like that, hit the like button, leave a comment below for sure. Let me know what you want to hear more about, what you liked about this video. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Let me know. Also, if you think this video could help you or anyone around you on your own social platform, go ahead, share this, hit the subscribe if you haven't already and you want to catch more videos like it. Until then, guys, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.